Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, February 11th, 2013, just a little bit after 7 o'clock. This is a committee meeting session of council, and we are going to start off with two presentations. First, community food initiatives, and second, some discussion about our beautification day that's coming up. So, community food initiatives, would you like to begin?
Sure. Is it okay if I just stand over here?
We would like that very much. And introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. So my name is Mary Nally, and I'm the Executive Director for Community Food Initiatives. We are a nonprofit that's been in Athens for 20 years now, and this is my first year as director. I just started last April. So I first of all just wanted to thank you. I know the city has been historically a very strong and generous supporter of our organization and our programs, and we very much appreciate that strong relationship. I just wanted to go over what our accomplishments were for 2012, let you know some of our plans for 2013, as well as just having the opportunity to introduce myself. Many of you, I believe, are familiar with our organization, but our mission is to support a local food system that increases access to fresh and healthy food to everyone in our region. And we do that specifically for immediate access to food through our donation station program that distributes to food pantries, and our community and school garden programs that kind of offer long-term food with the food pantries in terms of cooking and nutrition education. So some of the highlights of impacts from our community garden and workshop program is that we had over 50 gardeners in 6 locations around the county. We manage gardens at the east side, in the city, Hope Apartments, and then Gloucester, Chauncey, Nelsonville, and Stewart. We also hosted 32 workshops on gardening and cooking workshops, including food preservation. And then we also have the Yeah Kids program, which you may have seen at the Athens Farmers Market. These are the youth entrepreneurs at Hope. They're teenage children that live at low-income housing at Hope Drive Apartments. They have a production garden where they grow their own produce and then sell it at the market, and all of the profits go directly to them. They fill out timesheets, go through some work training, and are vendors. And they made over $800 this past summer at the market, and we're anticipating even more this coming year. Here's one of our pictures from our workshop series. We had a beekeeping workshop, and as well as things about canning and crowding. And we did workshops, we surveyed people who have come to our workshops, so that we are really trying to hone in on finding out what people need the most. And it's really turning out to be the introductory topics, just to get people started and successful at gardening or food preservation. Our donation station, kind of probably one of the programs that people are most familiar with, collects food at the Athens Farmers Market and then distributes it to area food pantries. Listed here are the top 10 pantries in Athens County that are distributing produce from the donation station. And so you might see some pantries or agencies that you're familiar with here, but we have 35 total pantries and agencies that we serve. And we also have a very significant impact on the local food economy. We spent over $17,000 collectively at the Athens Farmers Market and the Chester Hill Produce Auction this past year. So I'm not sure if there's anyone that's buying more than us at the Athens Farmers Market. And also to point out, all of those funds are donations. Those are local donations that people are making to us, and then we're spending that money at the market. And we distributed over 44,000 pounds. We are the only distribution point for fresh food for our area, aside from our regional food bank in Logan. Our Farm to Cafeteria program in 2012 taught almost 500 different classes on cooking and nutrition for the youth in our area, for students. I mean, we also did a lot of food sampling in the spring of last year, over 2,000 samples to introduce kids to new foods. really this is the part that I'm most excited about, that nearly half of our budget is sourced locally from the individuals and community members, both from our memberships, our workshop fees, and fundraising and sales. It's really, really powerful that, I mean, we're a small organization, our budget is small relatively, but it's huge that we're so strongly supported by our community, and we really appreciate that. Our members have nearly doubled in the last year, so people can purchase a $25 membership, and that gives them access to the community gardens, all of our workshops for free, and they get to vote for our board of directors. This is a picture from one of our workshops here. So some of our goals for 2013 is that I'm really interested in making sure that our community gardeners are set up for success at the get-go, so that you don't have to have green thumbs and have grown up on a farm to know how to do this. I want every community garden to have tools, a tool shed, easy access to water, a picnic table so you can bring your family, make it feel like a community setting. We're going to increase the community gardens by 30% in terms of participation. We're collaborating with Ohio University to set up a high tunnel and seed saving project. In Nelsonville, we are working with the Nelsonville Farmers Market to help train those community gardeners to possibly become future vendors at the market, as well as develop a strategic plan for the maintenance and expansion of community orchards. So I know that CFI and the city have worked together before on identifying where fruit and nut trees are in the city and doing some planting. This year we're going to be putting together a steering committee to make a strategic plan to make sure we have a plan for the long-term maintenance of those so that they don't become problematic later on, and making sure that people are getting to consume that food that is being grown. Again, we're increasing the poundage for the donation station. What's not on here actually in terms of donation station is that we're going to start tabling at the Chester Hill Produce Auction and be accepting food donations from them as well. So that'll actually be a capacity issue with our walk-in cooler space at AceNet, but that's a good problem to have. Another thing I want to mention about the community gardens is that we are putting in a community garden at Carriage Hill for Carriage Hill residents and anyone living on the south side. Carriage Hill is assisting us in the funding of that. They came to us, so we're very excited and already have, I think, 20 residents in Carriage Hill signed up to garden there. The Farm to Cafeteria program will be changing to specifically look at all school gardens. We've mostly just been focused on Trimble Elementary and high school, but I really want to come up with a strategic plan to help all the school gardens within the county. And then a new program we've developed called Discovery Kitchen is going into the food pantries and agencies that are distributing donation station food and providing cooking and nutrition classes so that people will know what to do with all of those zucchini. Which I'm sure we all kind of want to know what to do with all those zucchini. So we're very excited about that. And I'm also interested in the long term with community food initiatives to build in our own sustainability in terms of determining how we can best consult with other communities that are replicating the 30-mile meal program, interested in local foods, have farmers markets, and hungry people in their food pantries. We're doing really amazing things here in our community, and I think that we need to put some value to that and be prepared to teach others. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate, again, the assistance that the city has offered. And I did meet with Paul, I believe back in December. Was it in November? I don't know. It was a while back. We were hanging out. And so I have asked the city for $6,000 this year. There's only 5 staff people at CFI. I'm the only full-time person, and then I have a part-time manager for our donation station program, and then 3 AmeriCorps service members that are partially funded through the College of Osteopathic Medicine at Ohio University. And so each AmeriCorps member is in a different program area, all of which strongly impact not only the citizens of Athens, but the entire county. And $6,000 would help fund all 3 of them to an extent, and so that's what I have requested. The bulk of our budget is for personnel costs. We're very creative with covering our programmatic costs, so that has been my request.
Mary, thank you for coming, and I think we're all excited about your excitement for the coming year. Thank you for coming. Do we have some comments from council members?
Yeah.
I'd like to just tell you how much I certainly appreciate CFI and everything CFI is. I think it's really exciting to hear about the Chester Hill table being set up to where, if you can reach the 50,000 pound mark, that's monumental in my mind. And another thing I want to say, because I've gone out and taken part, at least in the tour of the Hope Gardens or Hope Apartments, project, and met Badger, and Badger walked me around, and again, certainly impressed with a program like that, where we're getting the area youth involved in entrepreneurial projects, the dilly beans and things like that they sell, which is my hat's off to you for what's been taking place. And I think it's important to be training our youth of tomorrow, entrepreneurial skills to think ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. What's being done with the garden around the community rec center? Is anything happening there?
The community rec center garden is managed by the Master Gardeners program.
I see. Okay. And the Carriage Hill, when's that going to start up?
We are planning to break ground next month, I believe.
And how big is it?
We're going to start with, I think, 25 or 30 plots.
Okay. That's substantial.
Yeah. I'm not going to make them unless the people are ready for them.
Right.
So they're ready for them there. They're really eager.
Well, be sure to let me know. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of international people that live there, too.
Yeah, and also they have a significant portion of the apartments that are Section 8 housing or low-income
Right.
housing, so there are a lot of families that live there as well. So they have long-term residents as well as short-term students.
Mary, you had your hand up?
Chris next.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to also commend you for doing a lot of programming with a really small budget and what seems like a reasonable request to the city for support for it. I had just one follow-up question. You said in your goals for 2013 you're going to increase the number of gardeners by 30%.
Right, so we had 50 community gardeners
Okay.
this past year throughout all of our gardens combined. So my goal is just to increase that. We're working extensively with some of the church groups in Nelsonville and the Athens City County Health Department to do some changes there, so that's kind of the next garden that's slated to really increase, and I think we'll naturally see an increase at the East Side Community Garden, and then with adding Carriage Hill.
Okay. So it sounds like a doable and achievable goal. So that's great. Good, thanks.
Jim.
Ken?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary, for your presentation. And this is for both you and the mayor. If you could correct me if I'm wrong. You're asking for 6,000. Was that correct?
Yes.
And that's an increase of 1,000. Is that correct? Because last year we had given
It's 2,000 actually.
a 2,000 increase.
Yeah, last
Okay.
year 1,000 went directly to the West Side Community Garden.
Okay.
Yeah, since they're operating, I mean, we're assisting in oversight, but they're essentially operating independently.
Okay. And I know in years past we had also given more when the budget was slightly more flush. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, we've ranged from 5,000 at the low, or 4,000 because 1,000 went to the West Side Community Gardens, up to I think the top end at one point was 15.
Okay.
Quite a few years ago when we
Yeah.
were flush, as you say. I budgeted 6,000 into the appropriation. About half that would be coming out of Athens Enhancement Fund. The other half would come out of sanitation, which is covering the compost side of it. That's how we've done it historically before, since the compost program is also usually going along with the gardening program. And again, to follow up with Councilmember Patterson's talking about, it's great watching those kids do it, because what happens is they grow the stuff and then they get money.
Yeah.
And that connection really sinks in that they can do this type of stuff, where it's the, as you say, the dilly beans or the, you know, or the, what is it, sauerkraut too. I bought quite a few sauerkrauts there too, so, as well as other things too. I mean, you know, tomatoes and things, so it works out. It's a good program.
Yeah, no, I concur, and I appreciate your clarification on that. And my perception is that with some of the Section 8 housing as well, Carriage Hill, that the programming can be extended up there too.
I would certainly hope so. Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that we can explore for the future. I've always wanted the Yak Kids program to grow, so
Thank you.
great. Yeah, thank you.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
In the past, there's been some money that's gone to West Side, but I thought they were kind of independent now. How much do you anticipate doing that this year out of the 6,000 would be?
I don't think any of that money is going to be diverted from that. Actually, in the budget, and just looking at my notes here, I really earmarked about $3,500 from each department, which would give you $7,000. I'm still anticipating another $1,000 to the West Side Community Gardens. Only if I'm approached by them. I'm not sure what their status is. I know some of the money last year was just to kickstart some of the tools that they needed. But again, I'm not sure where they are in their process. I usually leave that to Ron Lucas to have that conversation with them. He seems to be the point person for it.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Audience? No?
I
Thank you,
did
ma'am.
bring copies of our annual report. They're black and white. You can download them for free on our website, and then they're in color. But I can leave these for you if you would like. They go into a little bit more depth
Thank
than
you.
the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
We have another presentation from our Beautification Day person tonight.
All right, hello. My name is Melinda Ruberg, and I'm here today to talk to you about Athens Beautification Day. So I'm pretty sure all of you know what Athens Beautification Day is, but just in case, it is currently the largest volunteer project held in the city of Athens. What we really like to describe it as is a day where students kind of have the opportunity to give back to the community that has given us so much. And it started back in 2005 by the men's water polo team. And so last year was actually the 8th consecutive year that it went on, and it was by far our largest turnout that we've had so far. So we had 888 volunteers working on 25 projects, which spanned 2 square miles around the city of Athens. This year we're really looking for kind of the same turnout with a little more projects. And so I've actually been working on this event for 3 years. So I've been making like very meticulous notes on how to make it better every year. And so one of the big things was efficient use of volunteers. So 888 people is a lot, and it's hard to find so many projects for them. So last year we took really careful notes to see which projects lasted a little bit longer so we can send more people there, and which projects took a little bit shorter so we can send less people there. And then we also want to use our money that we receive more efficiently. So thanks to Ron Lucas, we did save almost all the supplies that we used last year, which is going to save us a lot of money on the supplies that we rebuy every year. So with that money, we're really looking to use more for more like elaborate projects, so more flowers and mulch for the middle schools and the elementary schools, more paint for graffiti projects and park projects. And then we're also trying to take better care of our volunteers. So pretty much the only complaint we got last year was that there wasn't a lot of water. We ran out of food in like 10 minutes. So we're looking to get water at every site this year, as well as kind of doubling our the amount of food that we're getting from Kaiser's. And then we also got a couple complaints about transportation. So I've been working with the school, Marty Pollins, as well as some of the RAs to use some of the RA buses to get transportation, not only for convenience, but to expand our project base. And then one of our main goals is to really reach out more to the community, so make it less of like a student only and more community members helping out. So we have presentations at like town hall meetings, the Kiwanis Club, Key Club, Lions Club, and stuff like that. And then we also want more of a community feel for after. So we're actually going to get some of the a cappella groups for after, as well as maybe a local band. Then of course the free food, which is always nice. And then this year it's going to be taking place on April 14th, which is a Sunday. Check-in will start at noon, and then at 12:30 we'll have kind of our pep rally with Mayor Weil and President McDavis. And then the free food and music will start around 2:30. And then here's a tentative list of our project locations. Most of them are returners from last year, but we've actually been working with the Community Involvement Center. Sorry.
Yeah.
We've been working with the Community Involvement Center to do some projects through Rural Action, which is a little bit farther away, but they do like the river cleanup, trail pickups, and stuff like that. But mostly the projects from last year are trash pickups, graffiti removal, planting flowers, and mulching. So that's pretty much all that I have. As far as what you guys can do, we would love a city council team. So registration is the same as last year. It's just through Eventbrite, Athens B-Day 2013.eventbrite.com. And then we also always appreciate your sponsorship, just to kind of have you guys on our side. But yeah, that's pretty much it, unless anyone has any questions.
Has the gauntlet been thrown down? Did I hear a challenge about a city council?
Oh, yes, the
I think, yes. I think the gauntlet is there.
You did mention needing or having residual paint from last year, but needing more paint for the graffiti. And you're talking about cover-up. Is that correct? You're talking about to
a lot of
remove
it is like
or
graffiti
to-
removal. We've actually had some businesses like contact us already, asking to be put on the list for graffiti removal. But then we also want to do some painting at the parks if they needed it, like some touch-up and stuff like that.
Michelle?
I really want to thank you for your persistence.
Oh,
3
yeah.
years is awesome. I remember when Mayor Weil and I heard the first presentation in 2005. We were at the Chamber of Commerce. Remember that in the conference room for the clean?
Oh, yeah.
The guys came from the water polo team and discussed it with us, and we were like, we're ready
Yeah.
for this. Is this the fest weekend? Which fest weekend is
11
this?
Fest is the day before. So last year it was the day after Palmer Fest, so we kind of sent like a large team there. But this year we're thinking that maybe they'll be partying all over the city, so we'll just send people everywhere. So yeah. But that's definitely why. Last year we switched it to Sunday. That was the first year we had it on a Sunday instead of a Saturday. And our attendance went up like 300 people. So we're hoping that that trend will continue.
Okay. Sunday cleanups are great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Council will get organized. Okay.
In the
And
past,
the mayor is invited too.
yes, usually I show up.
Okay.
In the past, we've actually put forward about $1,000 to their cause. It usually comes out of the Laux Trust Fund. I appropriated about $1,000 for that as well, just so you have it there. In both cases, if they invoice us, we'll cut a PO and get it out there. So we can get it rolling. Okay.
Make the note of that, yeah. Okay. Okay, any other comments from council?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to some committee work. Planning and Development Committee. Go ahead.
Great, thank you.
Member Fall.
Thank you. I have just one general agenda item tonight, and that's a continuation of our discussion about the revocable license for 63 North Court Street. I know that, and I appreciate that you've come back for this week, that there were some additional information, that members of council received after the initial discussion, and so several members felt that they wanted to have additional time to get questions answered and to discuss things. And then also we got the information from, and the general kind of review from Pat Lang, our law director. And so that's why I would like to open again. I only have one copy of Pat Lang's. I will read it, though.
Thank you.
Okay. Pat Lang says, okay, if council wishes to allow the encroachment, I'd recommend using something along the lines of the second ordinance of 2005, 013305, which probably, if my memory is the National Church, the NCR right-of-way that they passed to allow for building on the right-of-way down off Morris Avenue. Similarly, omitting a mention of a 10-year renewal, but perhaps including some language that council may revoke the license at any time for any reason, and that the owners agree to remove such encroachment should that occur. And then he says that if we go in, he will help us craft the language that we need. Basically, his take, as along with the planning, our city planner and our code office, says that this is not a revocable license. It's not a regular revocable license because it's a permanent. It's not like a fence or a sign where you can just say, move it, because it's part of a building, it's part of the structure. So that's, and I think that's the part that, the more information that we got after we had the discussion on last Monday. So I'd like to open it up to council members to.
So with that said, our discussion tonight, I think, is really important, because what we're basically saying is that what happens and what gets voted on in subsequent ordinances is what will stay. It will be permanent in most ways. So I think that's important to remember in our conversation. It's not like a sign that we say, every 5 or 10 years can continue to stand there. This is something that the law director is suggesting is fairly permanent,
But could be removed at any time as well, correct?
Well,
If
this
that was-
council would need, and it would, require doing something physical to the building.
Sure.
So, more than just like removing a sign. So,
Anything's possible in the building construction field.
Chris?
I'm very grateful that we got the additional information from city staff. And I have two concerns, echoing Councilmember Pappy's concern that what we do tonight does set a precedent, and that, as I understand it, since the revocable license resolution was amended back in '01, to my knowledge, there have been no revocable licenses granted for area above the city right-of-way, as in a building. So what we do with this, although I know that we say each and every revocable license is its own entity, I think it does very much set a kind of precedent for us. And in line with that, what we have on the revocable license review, the document that staff, council members did receive after the last discussion, was that we have 4 of our 5 staff persons who are making recommendations. So we have the code office, the fire department, the police department, and our city planner, all saying that they would that they either have capacity issues, was the comment from the fire department. Code enforcement says this is not recommended. The police have concerns about access. The city planner does not recommend approval. Now, we do have the 5th department was Public Works, and from an infrastructure standpoint, I can understand Director Stone's comments of it's a negligible kind of effect for something above the right-of-way in terms of, water and sewer. So he didn't have any concerns with it. I'm just processing this, and I, as a council member, want to say that we are separate parts of the city, that we're the legislative body, that the city administration is in charge of the management and administration of the city, and that we often consult with city staff persons for their recommendations. So we have 4 out of the 5 departmental persons saying concerns or recommend no. And my other concern then is the safety, and we have received, and thank you, Mr. Wharton, for the response back. I very much appreciate your careful delineation of different aspects that you address, the safety, the precedents, and that you're owning the property long term, and we very much value that input. But the safety is a concern. Many of us have gone on the Halloween safety patrols. Certainly the city staff works overtime on those weekends, and it is an issue. I mean, we've witnessed, and though I know that this wouldn't necessarily happen in your space because you have added a clause to your lease agreement, but that there have been beer bottles lobbed off of balconies. You know, we get on national TV with people exposing themselves, and they're out on balconies, you know, on Halloween. And safety is more the concern for me, because if we set this precedent and allow it, then there could be other balconies where an owner would not take as much care as Mr. Wharton is obviously, you know, evidencing that he would with his building. So the precedent and safety issues speak very strongly to me about this, and wanting to hear other council members' comments about this.
I think 2 points that you brought up about precedents. It's not just a precedence of having a permanent entity on our right-of-way. Like the NCR was, they were going to build a parking lot in the corner of a building on the right-of-way. This is something that's above the right-of-way, so we're now not only doing the flat part when we really think about the right-of-way, we're expanding the air. We're going up into the air rights. And this reminds me of like in New York City when they had the whole fight about air rights and stuff. And, you know, I think this is something that needs to be looked at. If we start giving right-of-ways for the first floor and then the second floor, and where does it stop? You know, that's something, because it's a precedence. I think that it has more than just the permanency of balcony, but also it's on the second floor. It's not a normal, everyday sort of right-of-way issue. Michelle?
So I do think we also have the issue of, you had talked last time, Mr. Wharton, about, you know, fire escape, kind of having it stick out a little more than 18 inches to have that aspect. And I think you can come up later and talk a little bit more about that. But I also think that we need to think about aesthetics too. And sometimes I know there's been some conversations where it just looks like there's bars over windows. And, you know, when you did go to the BCA and get this approved, though the terrace, this aspect was discussed, I think aesthetics were important. They're important to you. And that is an issue to consider here, because it would look like bars over the windows if it's flat up against the building. So I just think that is something to throw out. This is quite a large piece of property on Court Street, and we need to consider that as well. I know you would like that considered, but I think, you know, we need to look at that.
Steve?
If I may, one of the things that kind of keeps coming back to me as I think through this issue is that there's a couple other aspects that make this unique, I believe, and that is, one is that Mr. Wharton could easily, I think, have held on to the existing structure that was over the street and just remodeled that, and there it would have been an existing structure over the street, or over the sidewalk, rather. And with that, to retract something that exists as opposed to a build to where you have a structure where now you are adding onto it a balcony or a patio or some ornamental fixture on the front. I kind of view things in that way as well. I certainly understand the safety issues, and I have thought through that long and hard myself. But for what's being done, it almost begs for, possibly even re-looking at code and looking at issues where you have something that already exists out over the public right-of-way, and to have it in writing to where it is retracted within a certain number of feet versus taking an existing structure and building off of that and building out so many inches or feet, much like what has been done above People's Bank or above Hoffa's Records, as well as the apartments on Carpenter. There's a number of recent renovations that extend varying distances, which is interesting as well, anywhere from 24 inches to almost 30 inches in some cases. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's something I've been kind of looking into and having to mull over throughout this whole process. I think it's so multifaceted.
Just to go, yeah.
Sure. Well, Lahu, go ahead.
Well,
No, down there.
whatever.
Okay. I'll concede to Lahu. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yes,
I continue to support this. I think that aesthetically it's an improvement on what has been there and what as Member Patterson mentions, as what could still be existing there, which would be simply an extension of the building itself, as it was for many years. It's a major improvement into this building. I think Court Street will look better. No doubt, no matter what happens, whether there's a balcony or not, because of this improvement, I think that adding it, I actually like the atmosphere that it creates. I think I'd like to see more outdoor restaurant seating, cafe seating. I think that having that, just having those, it gives a different feeling, I think, and I like that feeling that's created. If we look at safety, there are porches on almost every, not almost every, but on many, many houses in town. Most of the rental houses that are just homes have porches. There are many other porches uptown, actually. Subway, we received pictures of many of them, and the mayor can correct me, or Paula if I'm wrong, but I don't ever recall any serious incident on these uptown porches and balconies in the recent past.
We've always been concerned about the one above Subway. And again, the law went into effect, so they are grandfathered existing.
Right.
And as far as People's Bank, it's my understanding from the code director is an 18-inch architectural feature would indeed be in compliance.
So I guess just to reiterate, I still support it. I think that aesthetically it's an improvement and a good thing to have on Court Street. Safety, I don't think it's any more hazardous than the windows that we have opening on the Court Street and the fire escapes that could be used for an unsafe purpose. So I support it.
I'm sorry, we did have some comments down here. Jeff?
Jeff?
I just want to say I'm in favor of the way it stands right now. The proposal is, I have no objection to it. I've read the concerns and I've heard them, and I've lived in this town most of my life, and I think I've seen about everything that could possibly happen around here. And one of the great things about Athens is, we're unique and we're kind of diverse, and we do have rules and regulations, and we do find ways to get around them sometimes if it makes things look better. And like I say, at this moment, I'm going to vote for it. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. So if I'm correct in understanding, we're engaging in discussion and dialogue tonight. There's no particular vote at this moment. And so I am anxious to hear from Mr. Wharton as well with information he has brought forth with us this evening. Some of the thoughts that I have in this process is I've been mindful of the comments from the full-timers at work within the city. They're the people who are digging into these issues on a daily basis and are much more knowledgeable than myself with these aspects. And I've had 2 conversations with our planner, and I know completely where he stands on this, and I respect that. However, I also concur that this is a wonderful aesthetic increase or benefit that's happening. This is a building that's sat empty for a long time and was a blight. The fire chief has also acknowledged that empty buildings are much more of a threat or safety issue than something that's being occupied. So I'm thankful for Mr. Wharton and his cohorts for fixing the building up and making it a nice entity on our Court Street presence. Similarly, I guess the concern that's been raised is the capacity of people that might be out there in the 4-foot length. That's my understanding. And I guess to put some perspective on 4 feet, it's essentially just barely over a yard, and 1 step is a yard. So I don't see there being an immense amount of space up there. And when I went to visit, and I believe that a number of us have been up there to see the space, so I don't necessarily feel threatened by the amount of bodies that would be up there on that perspective. And similar to what Member Ghazni said, and we have open windows on uptown Court Street and side streets, and I know that can be just as big a concern. I've seen water balloons barreling out of those, and that's an issue and a safety, and I've called the police when I've witnessed it myself. So I don't see a concern with this space as much as perhaps others do. But I am anxious to hear from Mr. Wharton as well.
Other questions from council? City administration like to?
I feel that you have all
Right.
the comments available to you, and I'm at a disadvantage. I don't have this response from Mr. Wharton addressing the other issues. So.
Okay.
And we'd like to have Mr. Wharton come up. Yeah, please.
All right, well, thanks for having me back again. I think first and foremost, I understand that it is the city's responsibility to make sure that things are safe, and I can certainly appreciate that. I think our primary focus for having a larger balcony than 18 inches is pure aesthetics. Certainly someone can come out on a balcony that's 18 inches. They can throw something. They can come out and open the doors and yell at someone if that's what's going to take place. Can happen on a 4-foot balcony. We feel that, this is the picture that we had, and this is what we're striving for. And this balcony here, and I've got some other pictures, and I know we've passed them around before, but like in some of those other locations, if you put an 18-inch balcony and spread the distance of, say, 6 feet, that kind of all fits, But if you spread, 30 feet or almost 30 feet with an 18-inch balcony, that truly is, in my view, going to look like just a bunch of, bars covering windows. I mean, when you're spreading 30 feet with 18 inches, those 18 inches look like 8 inches when you look at it from the street. I mean, it really becomes minimal, and it kind of gives you visions of maybe downtown and some underdeveloped or downtrodden neighborhoods in some cities. And so our primary goal, the whole project, was to have a nice appearance from the street and make it a positive project on uptown. And we feel that we are close to doing that, and we'll certainly, I'll put in my lease, I think everybody has a copy of the lease addendum, I'll certainly be diligent on making sure that that is adhered to and understood. And, someone said in the last meeting a couple weeks ago, maybe splitting it in half with a barrier and sort of, instead of having both 4-bedroom apartments, and again, it's only 8 people and their guests having access to it. It's not a common area, but, we have no issues with the same, fencing or whatever you'd like to call it, that we're going to border this, putting it right down the middle and making it, this 4-bedroom has this half, this 4-bedroom has this half. If there is some sort of incident, and hopefully there isn't, it'll certainly be easier for us to determine which half is responsible for that, and obviously easier to enforce. I think after discussing, we'd like to divide it in half, actually. The only thing I can say is, I don't think there's any concerns with folks trying to go over it, but we're certainly in favor of that, dividing it in half. And actually, after we talk about it, it'll give it more of a structural integrity of having another anchoring point in the middle. So we'll certainly do that, and if given the opportunity. And I don't know, I guess.
So Brian, if I may, for clarification, you're suggesting that you're open to placing the aesthetic iron fence between the 2 apartment balconies, so that they would be separate entities,
right?
Fencing in the middle there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after we thought about it, seems like a good idea. And I guess, people can misbehave from a 2-foot balcony, a window, a fire escape. I've been around quite some time, and, obviously there's a risk you take walking across the street, stepping on a balcony, going on a fire. And so things can happen, but the same that can happen from a 4-foot balcony can happen from a 2-foot balcony. And this is sort of a special circumstance where, there was something that, went the whole distance of the sidewalk. And I guess there was possibilities of maybe just keeping that structure the way it was and kind of remodeling that, maybe not having an open balcony, but certainly, it was there. It was grandfathered. It didn't have a revocable license. Maybe we could have kept that. But the whole time was, this was as the building, as close as we could make it, appeared in 1978, and it's what the Athens Comprehensive Plan has suggested. And
Is it there?
As far as the precedents, as Ms. Nisley said, they're all applications are independently viewed, and so this is something, certainly a special circumstance. There's not very, I can think of 2 buildings that have, without structural components to them going to the sidewalk. I can think of one on Union Street, just to the left of Casa, and State Street, just to the left of Casa, and then down on Union, above the bicycle shop, that that spanned a great distance. And we're wanting to bring that distance back. We could have came and asked for 6 feet if the goal was to have people out there to constantly be rowdy or party, or the goal isn't that. It was purely aesthetics, and 4 feet is what we feel that that fits the distance that the building does span width-wise. And so I'm certainly open to suggestions. Questions?
I have a question, in that, as I understand from the codes office, that the changes that have been made in buildings in the downtown area have been the 18 to 20 inches
Architectural feature.
architectural features.
So the statement that he could have kept that when you undergo a change of use, that would that's when conformity kicks in, just like everything else.
All
that we
right,
talked
so it
about.
would have been more towards the 18 to 20 inches. So we have one where the Board of Zoning Appeals actually recommended total removal. Is that right? Of the, of
I
the
don't think
balcony?
the zoning board of appeal had
They
purview
didn't
of it. You have
They
purview
didn't
of
recommend
this.
it. Okay, we have.
They
purview
were
on that.
discussing, I think, parking at the time, wasn't it? I think.
No,
it
they,
was-
they
I
did
re-
discuss that. Go ahead.
I reviewed everything, and they basically said they left that to the planning commission and/or city council.
City
They
council,
bumped it
all
up.
Yeah, that's you guys.
Yeah.
Buck stopped here.
Well-
I think the presentation we had was there wasn't a large balcony at this point. I think we were talking about the 18 inches. The architectural feature is very similar to People's Bank. I would point out there are differences between that and the greenery that existed. One was enclosed, so you had to actually go through the window to get out. On the other hand, when you talk about porch culture is usually not on the first floor, second floor. It's usually on the first, which makes a slight difference when you fall off the porch. That said, I am, it's your call, actually, and I am happy with whatever you come up with.
I have one other comment. I did review the minutes and the video of the planning commission, and that wasn't discussed there either. So apparently you guys wanted it to come to city council as well. I mean,
Yes.
it just wasn't,
It wasn't a part of the plans. The plans, by the time it got to us, that had been removed,
Yes.
is my understanding.
18 inches, architectural, little balcony. Very similar to what we were looking at People's Bank.
And we were instructed then that if we wanted to have, since we had removed what was there, or if we were going to remove what was there, we would have to come here to ask for a revocable license, which brings me here tonight. The structure that was there, I guess we could have looked into maybe altering that some way and having sliding window. The whole thing was that was not what we wanted, and it didn't. It was ugly. It was just ugly. It's not what we wanted.
And there's no question in our mind that this isn't an aesthetic improvement, but City Council changed the legislation in '05 knowing that this kind of thing was going to happen, that you were going to have to make decisions about things that happen in the air above the sidewalk, and if it came to the Planning Commission with no balcony on it, and now it has this, then is a compromise somewhere in between at 20 or 24 inches rather than 48, because I will tell you that if Pat Lang was here as law director tonight, he would say precedent has a very legal definition, and in the courts and in any place else, the precedent that you set with a revocable license in one place will absolutely carry through. I don't care if we look at 10 from now, every single person that comes back here after tonight will say, what was approved the first time for that revocable license? So I would pose, is there a compromise somewhere in between 0, as the Planning Commission saw, no balcony at all?
you mean
Actually,
18 inches?
there was a balcony on the
Yeah.
Was there?
on the planning commission. Yeah.
It's the 18 inches.
The
Yeah.
18
the
inches.
architectural features.
So
The
as
Juliet
an
balcony.
as an architectural feature, okay, that's a helpful clarification. But is there a compromise somewhere in between that's possible? And that would be my question to you all, rather than not granting it at all. Or,
Yeah, it's I guess again it's we're open to suggestions. We feel that the splitting of the balcony is a good idea. We're certainly willing to do that. We're open to reducing the size some if that's what you feel. Either way, it's whether it's a 39-inch balcony, a 48-inch balcony, an 18-inch balcony, the same thing can happen. And I certainly feel that it is safer. Again, worst case scenario, the building has been obviously going to be state approved, and the state inspectors have periodically come through. It's completely fire suppressed. And so a worst case scenario, I guess, if the fire started in the living room of one of the apartments and they couldn't exit, it's certainly something wider than 18 inches, I guess no one's going to convince me that something wider than 18 inches isn't less constricting in exiting that balcony under that scenario, and certainly 11 feet on this side of the building, the south side, is 11 feet where you can come over and maybe scale down some and drop. I mean, it's not something that's going to prevent me to exit. That's not a distance that is going to prevent me from exiting. And then from the police chief's comments, he has concerns with police access during response to calls such as noise, loud parties, etc. Would consider least restrictions controlling the access, which, I mean, obviously we've tried to implement the least restrictions, and I'm sure all you are familiar with the boxes with the master key that all the buildings on Court Street and Uptown have, and this will certainly have, and the fire department, the police department are certainly welcome to use that key as they see fit. I don't. It's just my opinion. I don't think they're going to need to. As far as the police, on loud weekends, 3 or 4 weekends out of the year, we have made it a conscious effort that we station people. We hire extra staff on those weekends. We station them at properties such as this to make sure things don't get out of hand. I mean, we are going to make sure that this is a responsible atmosphere on those weekends. I can't be there every weekend. I can't have someone there every weekend. But
Mr. Wharton, so the question from Councilperson Nisley was a possible compromise. I'm thinking of Carpenter Street and those terraces that were recently added to that renovated building, you know where I'm talking about? I think those, what do you think, 24 inches? Does anybody have an idea? I didn't get an answer on that. I asked today.
The little white ones?
24?
I do. I went out with a measuring tape and measured a lot of the balconies.
So what is that one on Carpenter?
It's about 32 inches.
That's 32, really?
Yeah. And People's Bank is 24, and
People's Bank is 24?
and
I think it was 20.
I was told 18, so I
well,
apologize.
the 18 was just where the 18 inches came from.
Help us out.
Yeah,
That's in the
I was told that to not plan on building a balcony with greater than 5 inches. That's what I was told, and so I thought, wow, 5 inches, that's going to be pretty detrimental to
Pretty
our
skinny.
plans, right? So had I known that, or had we known that, and it was considered at that time, let's maybe take off some of this the living room and use that as outside space. And then we decided, well, let's look at alternatives first. And so I went out and took pictures of recent balconies that were added. And purely a guess from the street and down below, I thought, well, that's probably 18 inches to 2 feet. I never measured them. So then I went back to the code office and asked, as where in writing is it where I can have 5 or 18? It's kind of gray, and had a few pictures of the People's Bank and one above Hoffa's, and so we just kind of guessed these are 18 inches. And then I was told right there on the spot that you can have 18 inches. And so I was just like, well, okay, so it went 5 to 18, but the 18 came from me. I mean, from my guess from the street. That's where the 18 came from. But Mrs. Poppy, when you were kind enough to visit the site, you inquired about how big this one was, and then this one. And this one is 39 inches, the one above the barber shop. I'd be happy with 39 inches. I mean, we'd be happy with 39 inches. I think this width will still achieve what we want aesthetically. It's considerably wider than this, probably double the width, but 39 inches I think is is wide enough to make it not look like there's just bars up the windows,
Bars on the windows.
which is, and, you know, I mean, this is a special circumstance. I mean, it really is. And there's not very many buildings that are going to sustain this sort of rehab or restoration. And, you know, I think, you know, it would be, it'd be nice not to, you know, set some sort of precedence that we're not going to be open to certain circumstances as well. And I mean, I'm, you know, we're happy to compromise at 39. We're happy to put the barrier down the middle. I mean, whatever, you know.
I think it's not, when we're looking at laws or right-of-ways that set precedents, it's very rare that it's not what wasn't done. I mean, you don't talk about that in the legal sense, that it wasn't allowed, so that sets the precedence. It's one, and all these other balconies, I asked about this, is that, you know, they were all kind of grandfathered in, so that they would have to be if they had to do any major updating or rehabbing, that they would have to go through the same process, and then they could just say, oh, well, you gave it to them. And so that precedence is really important, and so that's something, and because of the, you know, because it is different and it's a new area, that's why council tends to ask a lot more questions, because it's not a sign that's been there and everybody thinks about. Maybe what my suggestion would be to, I would like to have Pat and maybe some administration and myself and maybe Michelle would look at developing some restrictive right-of-way language that would be address a lot of the issues that council has brought forward about safety, aesthetics, precedents, and see what sort of right-of-way we can come up as a form of, because there's many ways to compromise. We can compromise on the width, which is something that I'm hearing council speak to, but also not just have an example of the requirements when you sign the lease, maybe having that put it in every year to the law director or the code office to make sure it's always up to date, that the right-of-way automatically ceases to exist if, or a new one needs to go forward if the building changes owners. And I need to get a hold with Pat to make sure those fit in with the ordinance concerning right-of-ways, and try to see if we can craft something, because this is different. You know, it is a different sort of I think, you know,
So
we
in a
want
sense,
to
you'd be standardizing
well, I think, you know,
some language or the considerations here, the criteria
Right.
for which we'll review
Because-
right-of-way and the kind of standards to set
right.
up for it.
And maybe balcony right-of-ways, after this whole process needs to be looked at as a different type of right-of-way, you know, and that this could act as a model. Because we are getting into, you know, the whole idea of having permanent right-of-ways and air right-of-ways, and, you know, those sort of things can get really difficult. So, I mean, we can't make new ordinance and then make somebody go through, you know, go through that again, but we can use this as an impetus to change to update things, you know. Ordinances and zoning is always a living document. So.
And I'm not sure I understand the process. Are you saying hold this up until?
No, I don't think that
this-
that would be requiring, if we made new ordinance about a right-of-way, that's, you know, kind of changing law in the middle of a project. That's, I don't think that Pat
Well-
would be very.
I'd like to go back to this precedence issue that you've brought up, Steve, too. I think we're all thinking about that, and you obviously put it in your document you sent to us, Mr. Wharton. But, for instance, the most recent that I recall is the Carpenter Street. And there was an old rotted thing that was ready to fall off. So the new people bought the building, fixed it up, and you're telling me that that's 30 inches from your... So I have concern when we say precedence that we're saying 18 inches, but I'm not understanding where the precedence is, because we have, even though that structure existed prior, and I understand that from a zoning perspective, but still, I think there needs to be some standardization, because it's obvious somebody didn't have their ruler out there.
If I may, I'm in full agreement with what you just said. I think it totally needs to be standardized if that's what's going to go forward, because, again, there does seem to be some variability that's out there. I was looking through code and building code, and I don't know that I came across an actual inches that something can be in the city of Athens anyway, in terms of something extending out of the front, or from the front of a building. Like I said, I can understand a new build to where we have strict guidelines for a new build, a new renovation where a patio or a balcony or a front room like the fishbowl on the front of the Blue Gator, that something that existed, or I'm sorry, that you're building something out that looks like that, as opposed to, again, this whole notion of retracting and cutting it back to something to make it an aesthetically pleasing and enhancing the city's beauty.
So, well, Jeff?
I just want, what's the original length out over the sidewalk?
11?
Yeah.
11 feet, so you've lopped off 7 feet, and now it's back, you want 4 feet, right?
Or 39 inches.
Or 39, but,
And I appreciate your compromise.
well, I don't know, 7 feet sounds like quite a compromise to me right
Yeah.
there.
But, I mean, 39 inches, I think, I mean, our whole goal was to make it have curb appeal. And we feel it can be achieved with 39 inches. We looked at that one balcony today. And, I mean, that's what we want, just to make it, look, aesthetically appealing. And, I mean, the same things, again, can happen from, I mean, they can open the doors with 18 inches and something, I mean, this could, potentially be a little safer if they had to exit with less restricting and stuff. And,
How much steel do you have to cut back?
uh,
I looked at those I-beams.
Yeah, no,
They're fairly large.
more than 7 feet right now, yeah.
Well, how many are there in total? Going down the street?
Oh, there's, I think, 4, maybe? Yeah, 4?
4?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Quite a
So,
lot.
So, Ella,
Just a sort of a final thought that's been swimming around in my head is that this is building homes for people. For, in most cases, not long-term homes, but it's going to be someone's home for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and then someone else probably. I think that if I were going to live there, I would enjoy having a porch or a balcony in the front, and I think that most people would. And so we're building homes, or you're building homes for people, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. That it's also what type of construction is happening, and it's not common that the city has input because of the buildings right on the right-of-way in this case, but in most cases we don't. But I think that would be the type of apartment that I would want if it's an option. And so that's one reason that I support it too, is that I think people living there would appreciate it more.
and, on the lease addendum, I'd like for them to be able to enjoy it, certainly. And, I think, see, I put it here on number 2, no grills or any other items are permitted on the balcony. I guess that needs to, the only permissible items allowed on the balcony are outdoor furniture, patio furniture only, and when not being used must be kept inside. We want them to be able to use it, but at the same time, we want it to stay neat and clean and appealing from the street when it's not in use. So I think we put in here that we reserve the right to remove, landlord reserves the right to remove any items from the balcony at any time without notice. So, we'll certainly nicely ask them and remind them that they can't keep it out there, and if it's a problem, we'll make sure that it's taken care of.
Mr. Wharton, the depth of a chair is about 22 inches, if you measure a chair. What you'd probably, so that's just something to keep in mind for people.
And I'm just concerned that if we expand that 22 inches or 18 inches, 30 feet, it really does minimize the 18 or 22 inches drastically. I mean, it makes it look like it's half as big. I mean, that's a big span, and I mean, it's hard to kind of visualize that without standing outside but I mean, that's quite a span there, and it will reduce it, at least from the street. It will appear like it's much less width.
Thank you. I just had a few more last thoughts, and that is, I do concur with the need for some standardization with this, and because I think that yourself or other developers may want to continue forward at some point with other projects on Court Street, and I think having something that makes sense and streamlined so that people aren't wasting their time going back and forth to code, I think there does need to be some standardization. I do think that we need something in place so that it's obvious and apparent from this point forward what needs to be done in that building process. I do appreciate your willingness to compromise on this. When we look at the safety aspect, the quote from the fire department fire chief is that he does not have an issue from a fire perspective if it's no wider than 48 inches. The capacity of people up there is the big concern from the fire department's perspective, but I think your willingness to compromise on two levels there with the divider and or making the space a little smaller is significant, but I do also feel that we have to think of the executive branch's efforts to enforce laws and within that capacity. So I do see the need for some systemization and organization with this, but I also applaud the efforts to fix the building that you've done so far and compromise on this space.
I would agree that the standardization of this would be more helpful, but it's good that I guess we're here, and maybe that will carry forward into that. As far as the fire department, where Chief Troxel said 25 people, I think it's going to be hard to. I mean, if you stand, I mean, you can't stand two people widthwise. Unless you're pretty slender. I mean, to get two people widthwise between the railing and the building, even at 48 inches, is about all that you're going to achieve. And so, if we divide it in the middle, I think it would be difficult to imagine. And I know last time I was here, you said you would, might be surprised at what they can fit on there. But it might be difficult to imagine 25 or more people up there. But we'll definitely have the sign. It'll be a permanent sign above the door, whether it's 39 inches, 48 inches, or 18 inches. We'll have a sign up there letting them know how many people are allowed on here. And, I'll go with the 25 or fewer, regardless of the size.
Well, I think at this point, since it's kind of getting later, I think that what I would like to do is get some language. I mean, one level is you're kind of the guinea pig for this. I agree that some of the we have had some plans put forward for downtown rehabilitation plans. The downtown one that we had pictures of last committee meeting that does show this, and so it's something that's been put out there for a lot of people to think about for many years, and now we're kind of following up on maybe something that's starting to happen. So we do need to look at standardization, what needs to happen in code after this particular one, so that when it has a precedence, that it's the right type of precedence, and look at our right-of-way ordinance, make sure that we may have to update that when it comes to this sort of thing. I'd like to get together with Pat Lang with this, see what sort of language would be needed, and see how we can compromise with the width of, and see what else is out there and such. I'm getting the kind of general feeling that 48 inches is too wide for most people, so we can look at some of the logistics of having it less wide. So does that seem like a reasonable way to go forward with this? So I will work on that in the next 2 weeks.
And are we hearing 39 inches right now?
Well, I'd probably do 36 as a round
36
number,
is a
but
standard.
I would like to get together with Paul Logue, the city planner, and Paula, and just, touch base with the people who are have the most question about this and did say that this was not a good idea. So I'm not comfortable right now saying, well, let's do it at, 16.5 inches. That's something that I would like to get more consensus on,
No, I'm asking for this particular case.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean, I
okay.
think that we need
Okay.
I want to talk to what's logical, and so,
I don't think I heard a consensus on 48 inches being too long. I think I heard a couple voices saying that was the case, but I wouldn't say that was a consensus of council.
right. Well, I think I kind of got the idea that having as a model, that people would, I think that I think we're right now. And it's like, how comfortable are we to go forward? I guess we could say 18 inches and no, and have a straight board, or we can try to find compromise and consensus, which we could have a vote on it right now, or we can try to figure out whether we want to.
And I think there's some of us who are comfortable with far less. And
I'm comfortable with
Not-
48.
There you go.
so, compromise is somewhere maybe in between.
So, given the search for compromise, what timeframe are you?
Oh, I will get with Pat in the next couple days and start working on this language. I would hope to have it not probably done by Monday to introduce, but send it out as a working document to get feedback on, and work with Mr. Wharton, and, any council members that want to. So maybe what we can do is in 2 weeks, just quickly present what has come up, for the introduction for the first reading, the next council meeting. So it'll be 2 weeks before we get kind of the working final document out. Does that seem reasonable? What, you're
Well,
sneering.
okay. I'm wondering what, after another 2 weeks, you're going to present, if we can't just kind of discuss it next week before the ordinances. I don't know that we need another 2 weeks and then.
Because I won't be able to get it done in a week. That's difficult given everybody's schedule, just to pop right in, Pat, and say, please put this ordinance. I might be able to try to do that, but I don't think that I'm, given just logistics, I can see whether that's possible, but, I think that we can, I have a whole list of things here that I would like to see go into it, and I want to get Pat's input on it, and whether we can even ask these sort of things and make this kind of model legislation that we want to, so.
So you're looking for the model. This is
No, well, I think that,
he's the guinea pig, or this is but
Yeah,
we're
I
looking
mean-
at the model.
well, no, not the model. I think it's two different things. But what we ask here is going to be kind of the precedent setting. So we need to, require, the lease amendments. We need to, say certain things and make sure all those bases are covered. Because if this is sloppy and then somebody comes back later and says, well, you did it this way, so.
Well, you would be changing the legislation after
Well, and
this.
these
particular-
questions will help to inform that discussion that will happen on another committee meeting on how we may need to change the ordinances that are presently, either make them stronger so that this will never happen again, or,
Never's a long time.
yeah, exactly, so.
I'm willing to accept whatever, we would like something that would exceed 3 feet a little bit because the aesthetics, and I guess our concern right now is this has been sort of the holdup on completing the outside for several months, and we were hoping to get a jump start on this soon. We're waiting to complete what the street level will appear like until we can complete how much balcony there's going to be. And so I guess if that's what, maybe we could, I guess we would hope that we would get some sort of resolution soon, so the tenant coming in and soon will not have to deal with any.
Yeah, we can understand that, but council never acts very quickly. We will, after we develop there is always the 3 readings.
Yeah,
which is-
no, I understand,
so-
yeah, we understood that it would be a 3 reading thing.
So,
I guess, if I may interject, I guess I'm confused because I believe that Mr. Wharton's addressed the 2 safety issues from fire and police perspectives, which are the biggest safety issues within looking at this form. I believe that he's addressing them. So, I guess on that level, I don't see the delay.
well, I think that there's beyond safety. I mean, there is a whole realm about precedence. And that, I think that is a really important thing because it's just like building a parking lot on, which is, you could say it's more permanent, but you could say it's, so I think that is the law director and the planner have both kind of said, you need to watch what you're doing because this will set precedent. And, compromising and everything is great, but we need to make sure that we just go with eyes wide open about what sort of long-term repercussions this may have on other people coming to council to ask for. I mean, it would be great if everybody developed and we can, have, become like New Orleans of Ohio, or we come and have everything look, that much worse. So that's why I think that, and I can contact Pat and see whether I can speed things up, but I don't want to get people's hopes up with the speed.
I know, I don't want to belabor this either. I know we've been hashing through this for an hour and 20 minutes. But I do want to raise the question to be asked as well, or at least explored, is what precedence has already been set with the existing creations since 2005 or 2001 with existing balconies that are out there of varying widths, not widths, of depth. So it has to be looked at, I believe, because again, I feel personally that it's unfair, would be unfair to anyone to include Mr. Wharton if all of a sudden a number came up saying, this is because we don't want to set a bad precedence into the future with whatever size, because there's already varying distances,
Which is
depths.
sort of the whole reason why I'm here. There's sort of a precedent set at 18 or 24 inches, and so I'm here asking for the approval to have something that's bigger than what is something that I can just go out and build without coming here. And
I think
and
I think we do, see, this seems to have so many nuanced discussion here, and I think that's a really important thing. I did talk to John Paskey, our code director, about some of it, and there hasn't been a balcony right-of-way put forward since the change of the ordinance. I think most of the balconies that are there are grandfathered because they've been there, since the passage of the ordinance. So this is kind of the first one. From what I understand, you can have architectural design elements that go out to a certain degree without going through the process.
People's Bank is the only one I know of.
Right. So I'd like to see the process they went with. Is that because that's in code as 18 inches or
Well,
what?
there was, in terms of a process, it was just on the plans and accepted as the architectural feature. In my mind, accepted at 18 inches. Again,
So-
how things are viewed on a plan and what becomes reality.
those 18 inches, I mean, I was told 5. I was told 5 like 3
Right, and
months
we
ago.
understand that, and that's something that how we make things better is when people come and say this is kind of confusing.
Yeah, and
So, I mean, I think, if we took a vote on it tonight, I don't know if anything would pass.
yeah,
So,
I'm not asking.
I mean, I think that it would behoove us to go and make sure we go through this, talk to Pat Lang about what we need to do to be a semi-permanent right-of-way, which is what we are talking about, and make sure that we get it right, and so that when, next year when we're sitting here having the same discussion, we can say, well, this is what we did, and this is what we required, and this is how big you can have it.
And
So-
I'm going to depart with this, but if you come back maybe with a number, let's say that's 24 inches, and we don't think it will achieve what we're aesthetically looking for, do I come back and ask for a revocable license that's, 30? I mean, I don't know. Where does that put me? You know what I mean? I'm coming
Right.
back and asking them for the same thing, or I'm not sure what. I mean,
Well, I think that getting together a ordinance, usually what we do is the ordinance gets introduced, and then council members, I mean, I can introduce an ordinance next week on just the regular old right-of-way, and ask for amendments to it. However, I don't think that's the best process to go forward with this. I think that we need to take another week to be able to make sure that all those sort of the dotted i's and the crossed t's are put in here. Talk about what the other things are on the other balconies that are out there, whether they're and whether some of them need to get a right of way, even though they're already built. I don't know how that works, but when they change uses. So I think that just is the more, the smarter way to go at this point. And I think that there's so many questions that if we just kind of would just not go at all, to tell you the truth, from what I'm, the general non-consensus but majority view sort of thing.
Member Paul,
So.
as chair of the committee, you can bring the legislation forward when you want to.
Right.
That's true.
So I'm much more happy with bringing it to, because I think it's going to take 2 weeks just to be able to talk to the people we need to talk to. So I will have it ready for the next committee meeting. And I don't have any miscellaneous.
We had a brief miscellaneous.
You have a miscellaneous.
Now, I do
Is it a
mean
quick
brief.
one?
The mayor and I had our first reintroductory meeting with AEP this afternoon. We discussed getting in advance infrastructure work on their system so that the city of Athens can review. That's primarily related to the Columbus Road project that's occurring now. In addition, we have asked them to go ahead and at least run some numbers on what would be the 1% of the gross revenue and what figure that would be, and then what that might ultimately mean to our AEP customers here in the city of Athens. I also talked about sneakers. Did you want to add anything?
Again, they look at that 1% as really just a tax that we'd be taxing the customers for. They kind of have trouble wrapping their heads around it. Again, our concern, of course, is the process for notification of everything from tree trimming to the use of the right-of-way when they're doing repairs or major repairs in that sense. I think that's all we covered, really.
I think it'll be March before we have a next meeting to allow them time to come back and have some answers to those. So we'll notify you. That's all.
I have a question. So that 1% is for them to continue to operate and take care of the trees, or this is
No.
1% was a request to find out what that is, gross revenues, and then that figure would be put in our energy efficiency pot, as it were, to improve energy efficiency throughout the city.
It's just an idea that came up as part of the negotiations for the use of the right-of-way.
Okay.
And it was the possibility of getting a small amount of what they, it's a franchise fee, just like it's common throughout the country for many things. And so they like to refer to it as something else, but it's a franchise fee that the city gets something in exchange for them using the public right-of-way to install their equipment in their lines. And so that was just an initial inquiry, if I understand correctly, to see how much that would be and sort of what would the city be able to do with that from our perspective.
And how it may affect the rates of the customers. And they did state that there is a right-of-way ordinance, and Zanesville is an example that they has that, where you can actually, all you can reap back is exact costs related to, like if we had to send Public Works out there to help block off the street when they're moving a pole or what have you. It sounded a little bit convoluted and complicated, but we're at least going to look at it. So.
And look at that model. Again, I think that's to recoup any cost of damages in terms of sinking or something like that damage they would do. Again, they also point out that the right-of-way use is not required in that sense. I mean, the alternative to them is to pull up the telephone poles, and we don't have any. They said if the franchise fee should actually lapse, which we have to July, I believe was the extension, they would still proceed to operate, but they could also just walk away from it. The biggest change there, of course, would be the indemnity of who's actually responsible if the pole falls down on somebody. Is it us or them at that point? So there is a little back and forth on this. I asked them how other systems work in that sense. That's where we got the Zanesville. Actually, some cities have their own electric system because they own the poles and the lights and the wires and everything like that, and buy the electricity out of there. Again, it's kind of splitting up, as you know. You've probably received all the ones about generation opportunities. So therefore, this is a slow split between their distribution and their generation. And they're in the same boat, so to speak. It was a good hour and a half. Yes. We missed you guys.
Talking about right-of-ways.
Right-of-ways and electricity.
It seems to be going on. And
We love right-of-ways.
thank you.
And any more miscellaneous?
Yeah.
Are you going, I heard that you're writing a Clean Ohio grant.
Pardon me?
A Clean Ohio grant? You're going to come forward when we know more about that?
You know,
Well, interesting you should ask that. At the time, initially it's for the Dollar property.
Right.
Okay. Then, when the sale of University Estates happened, I went ahead and reached out to the new owner about what you all saw in the paper, purchasing that same property that we wanted to get from the bank previously. I was informed today that the property is for sale again, so I'm not going to go through the efforts unless I find out that the next property owner is going to be a willing seller. So then we'll go right back to the Dollar property because we don't want to compete amongst ourselves.
Right.
But that one was a higher dollar
cost.
versus what the Dollar property would be. So.
Yeah, I had several.
One or the
people ask
other is
questions.
definitely going to be coming soon. So thank you for allowing me to bring that up.
That's all the miscellaneous I have.
I'm going to move on to Finance and Personnel. Member Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have several items tonight. The first one being the wastewater treatment plant and an update for you on the legislation that will be moving through for the next few months. You may recall that at last week's meeting, we had the reading of a resolution for tentative award to the company that had submitted the lowest bid to the city for the engineering and construction of our wastewater treatment plant improvements project. We'll have several other pieces of legislation that will be coming through in the next few weeks. One of them, as mentioned earlier, will have an introduction of the authorization and appropriation. And at this point, we're not quite ready, if I'm understanding correctly in the process. I spoke with Jessica Edine today, and that we have 7 possibilities of project plans and the amount of money that will need to be appropriated so that city council staff will be, and some council members and the auditor will be meeting to move forward on the next steps on that for the appropriation amount and the authorization of that. Likewise, I had earlier talked about a sponsorship agreement with a Water Resource Restoration Sponsor Program, WRRSP. And this is a particular kind of program where we can get credit and a slightly lower interest rate on our loan if we link up with another project around the state. What I learned today is that the 2013 program listing is not yet out from the Ohio EPA. So once again, we're pending on that. As soon as we have the information to be able to move forward with it, we will go with that legislation. And then the other piece of legislation that will be coming forward after that will be the loan authorization from the Ohio Water Development Authority. And so they're all interlinked pieces of legislation that will get us into the next steps on the wastewater treatment plant. Are there any other updates we should be aware of about these pieces of legislation?
Nope.
Just items are pending, and we'll keep you informed on that. The second issue is for the Finance and Personnel Committee has to do with staffing, and we mentioned this earlier that there were some seasonal workers, and that they're looking for the funding. The city is recommending funding of 2 seasonal workers. This would be within lands and building. And this would be authorizing funding for these 2 part-time positions. And then the other staffing change that I'm aware of is that within the police department, there are several auxiliary officers, and 2 of those 3 are at a certain wage per hour, and the third position, the auxiliary officer communications in parking, is at a slightly lesser rate. So if I'm understanding correctly, we're wanting to make all of those consistent so that all the police auxiliary officers will be at the same rate per hour. And a miscellaneous item from an email received from Chief Pyle, our police chief, and these are about funds that remain in the LETF fund and Law Enforcement Trust Fund. Excuse me. Thank you for the full title on that. That's account number 293. And there's approximately $32,000 left in that fund, and the police chief is requesting an appropriation of $15,000 so that that money would be available if the need arises to purchase equipment that normally the police department couldn't afford during the course of the year. Yes. Mayor
Yes,
Watt.
and the appropriation I was putting together, he did not request anything at that time. That's why I zeroed it. I didn't realize that he wanted some money in there, so.
Okay.
When he came back and says that we normally put some money in there for odds and ends.
Okay.
Okay, so.
I have a
The estimated revenue, I think from Kathy at the time when I was putting that together was about 17,000 in it. I mean, there's 30,000 in certified revenues, but her estimate that the coffers get filled about 17 per year.
Okay.
That was her evaluation in last November.
Okay.
And so that money is used for, it can be used for anything, or is that 32,000 or 17 as it
His
comes
examples,
in?
if there's something goes bad, he talked about if you have several tasers go bad, if you need to replace a laptop.
So it's kind of his little savings account, his law enforcement trust fund, or where?
It's money that usually comes back from impoundments, forfeited of properties, monies, what was the other one he talked? Court, yes. In other words, other things that, just basically come back and gives them able to fix things if need be. Again, he did not ask anything at last year during the request stage of putting the budget together, but he pointed out that he didn't have anything in there, so we'd like to fill it up. And we're not really filling it up because we've got 30 as certified, but we'll give them half.
And the only other miscellaneous item I have is that we, council members did receive copies of the financial reports for the month ended January 31st. So if you have a moment to please look at those, because we'll move forward with a motion to approve those financial reports next week as part of our agenda. And I'm looking to see if there are other miscellaneous items in finance and personnel.
And I apologize for so late in the day to bring these up. A very minor thing, when last year, near the end of the year, you authorized some capital funds to be for code enforcement for the new filing cabinet. They have an opportunity to get carpet replacement. It's over 12 years old, and he's actually has found money within his own different line items, but in order to get it transferred into
The TC 500s.
the capital line, I'll need an appropriation for that, and they're actually scheduled to start that this week, so I guess I would request consideration of an appropriation on Monday that also, or the transfer, whatever the format is.
So that we
can
suspend
proceed.
that appropriation ordinance when we do it. Do we know how much the money is needed?
$6,703.39. To the
How about-
penny.
And he's found places to take it from,
6704.
and
Okay.
the fact is now that you got the old cabinets up, you may as well do the carpet as far as the file cabinets are off before you fill them up again.
And they are taking $4,000 from their electric because last year they used just under half of the $10,000 budgeted due to their new HVAC system. So, which leads me to, we
Perfection.
need new boilers in the city
Oh.
hall. So I should have a real quote prior to next Monday. It is, my understanding is it's going to come in under $40,000. These would be energy efficient. I would like Perfection to just take a look at the quote too and kind of confirm that this fits in with the building envelope. And we'll have to take that money out of capital improvements.
I'll point out the money he saved, of course, is the stuff that's supposed to go back into the borrowing of that.
That's true.
Remember? Okay, so it's not like it's,
So I may be coming back needing more money for code.
and actually, the whole reason for the boilers is that the chimneys are actually being degraded by the venting of the lower efficiency furnaces that are in the building here. We have 2 boilers, and the hope is we replace one with, 95 plus, and therefore not have to vent it through the chimney, which is slowly degrading. We'll probably have to deal with.
Replace both, Mayor.
What?
This was for both.
Both of them,
Mhm.
okay. And we'll also have to probably repoint the chimney up there at the top. I got the
I was
pictures.
just taking it one step at a time.
Okay, sorry.
Let me
I'm trying to kind of give
eliminate
you
the
the
problem
overview.
and the big monster in the basement, and then we'll come back later about redoing the masonry.
Will that 40,000 also, or less than, also include any electrical retrofits that need to take place with this? Because I imagine the wiring with the old boilers.
Should, they're coming by Wednesday to walk through the city hall and look at the existing old radiators and make sure that everything would be compliant with that, so I'll be asking for that. Yes.
I'm wondering if, so the original perfection proposal said we needed to get rid of these boilers and get newer ones. And we've known they've been sort of on their last leg for a few years. Their proposal also included many aspects of the heating and cooling system throughout the entire building, different zones, different, what was needed in different rooms. And I don't remember all the details. It was a few years, 3 years ago now or something?
Probably.
Are we looking at doing any of that other stuff that also makes it cheaper to heat and cool the building, or just looking at the boilers?
That's why I'm going to request that they look at this quote and look at what is being provided. And to add my last miscellaneous item, it is perfection. The final lighting, we actually let that lapse, we meaning the city administration, because we're working with them on correcting some issues at the community center and the parking garage. That's all been done to my great satisfaction, and they actually got a bad batch of bulbs. That's what happened at the community center. Now everything's fine. So we'd like to bring that back and get in on this so that we can get that final, I don't know, $350 per LED light rebate savings.
So this was something we had discussed last fiscal year. We had approved.
You'd already approved
We'd
it. I mean,
approved it and moved
Debbie
it
has
forward.
it down pat. So it's really just
Okay.
bringing that same ordinance back up and
Forward
allowing
again.
us to proceed. So.
Okay, thank you. That's good to have that resolved.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
As for the other phase 2, 3, 4 of the perfection, we'd have to look at it again. I know we did very little on the first phase for City Hall.
Very little.
Yeah, 2 windows?
2 windows.
Okay.
2 windows.
But at the same time, I forget what the other energy savings were discussed at the time. Some of them would be pretty pricey, I imagine, and the return on the dollar would be much lower. If I remember, this is not one of the forefront buildings that does need it, but there's constraints of historic value, retrofitting, and the design that exists right now. I mean, some people would actually say tear it down, but we just spent money on a cupola, so I'm not about to do that.
Well, it would be good to address that so that we're moving forward step at a time on those improvements, and it's good to pay attention to those. So I appreciate the comment from Councilmember Gosling. Any other miscellaneous items for Finance and Personnel?
Not that we know of.
Member Butler, City and Safety Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that Member Patterson was going to discuss the OCJS JAG grant this evening, and I will turn the reins over to him.
Thank you, Member Butler. Police Chief Tom Pyle would like to apply for one of the grants under the Recovery Act. It would be the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant to apply for a $30,000 grant to replace an aging Crown Victoria vehicle that has in excess of 100,000 miles on it. As some of you may or may not be aware, that those vehicles run in terms of efficiency somewhere around 13 to 16 miles to the gallon. Knowing our city streets, it's probably on the low end, I would assume, and that he would be looking into more energy efficient vehicles. But I believe, help me out on this, Mayor, if this is not correct, but the deadline, or Paul, is the
Deadline
deadline?
is
This
the
the
February 28th.
28th, so
Okay, yes.
this would have to, we'd have to suspend on this as well in order for this to go through.
Yes, and again, it's a long shot, but we may as well try for the grant to pick up an expensive cruiser if need be. The requirements are that it can't be unmarked, it has to be a marked vehicle and law enforcement vehicle. And the maximum, I think, for any of these grants is about 30,000, but it should get us, would get us a vehicle. And again, he's trying for it, so he can get something new.
I was going to say a fuel-efficient vehicle.
I have no idea how we'll work on that.
What sort of grant match does this have?
No grant match, as far as I can tell. I've just gotten to reading some of it, but I haven't gotten all of it. As far as I know, the match is not there, required. Probably would help if we did have a match. We'll find out.
Well, one of the things that I know that the chief mentioned to me is that the cruiser that they're looking at may be, several $1,000s more. When I say several, it could be $7,000 or $8,000 more than the $30,000 if they are successful at getting this. So it is a significant chunk of money to be able to get this grant if it comes through, to offset the type of cruiser that he's looking at. And again, one of the things he expressed to me in my conversation is not possibly looking at energy efficient vehicles to replace this. He's happy with his 6-cylinder that he uses, and that I'm sure gets better gas mileage than the Crown Victoria does.
If I may, I have some other vehicle replacements that I'd like to speak to
Yes.
at this time.
Thank you.
This is, I know you can't see anything from there, but this is the green pickup truck that's in front of the community center that I have asked for it to go far away, like go down to the bottoms. So, and if you looked up close, you could see the chewed up interior, and actually they couldn't move it until it dried out from the leaking roof. So there's going to be a couple of them coming to you to actually dispose of formally and then allow replacement. And
That's
the
a
other
1989, is it?
1989.
Okay, yeah.
Only 96,000 miles.
Hard
A
miles.
manual. Those are hard to find. And then in addition, the landscaper work truck needs replaced and actually have a correct bed for the water, called the
Tank.
water tank that
Carboy.
they utilize. And
Buffalo.
so those will be coming forward asking for, as we reduce one to another.
Lands and buildings?
Well, this was lands and
Oh,
buildings.
that is lands
so-
and buildings, okay.
And there are just a number of other aging vehicles that need replaced, so I'll try to bring them to you.
I know down the line there will be discussion in the future about fire trucks as well too. So that's something that I know is down the line.
It is, actually it's in for 2014, and I've said realistically it looks like 2015 for a $500,000 pumper truck. So I'd kind of like to get the ladder truck paid off before we go into that, so.
And if you remember, Councilmember Bain extracted a promise that they wouldn't be chasing a pumper truck real soon. Whether that's 3 or 4 years, how much that commitment was, I do not remember exact years.
So a couple comments on the vehicles. Since several years ago I drafted the Green Fleets Ordinance. As I haven't seen any accounting year to year of any progress we've been making on, I know we have been making some progress, but I've not seen any accounting on how well we're doing when we're replacing vehicles, if we're choosing the right size replacement or a more efficient model that's out there. Specifically with the police department, they haven't been open in the past, but I'm wondering if they're becoming more open now to a hybrid, for example, as a marked cruiser. I've seen many cities that I've been in have those, and so I think maybe it's time for the city of Athens to give it a shot.
I can just
as an
share with
example.
you that the chief, his vehicle is a hybrid, and that operates fine. Although he was in a chase, high-speed chase, and couldn't keep up. So I don't know that there's going to be much welcoming of that for the actual cruisers, other vehicles. As you know, the Dare is now the hybrid Prius. Thank you.
From the code department, right?
So we're working towards that, but they are going down from 8 cylinders to 6 cylinders, so they're small. And part of the problem is still the reporting. So what we've done this year is just say, okay, mileage start now. 6 months, we're going to assess that mileage versus, fuel intake, and then again at the end of the year. So baby steps.
Is there? Okay, that's getting into something else.
Okay.
About high-speed pursuits within the city, whether or not we should be doing those, if they can be done safely.
We have,
That's
we
not-
have,
that's
we
not
have
really a
jurisdiction
topic
over
for now.
50, 32 and 50, so that's on the highway as well. I mean, sure, if you can get pulled over by our guys on 50 right
Well,
there.
I guess I'll just say other police departments are doing this, and it's working out for them, so I would
I
again...
will ask the chief.
I
I'm
would
not
again
saying no.
push,
I'm just-
push for that consideration.
And I hope to get the data collected that you're asking for.
Right.
And I don't want it to be onerous. I think just simply a list of, these are the vehicles we got rid of, these are the ones we got in. You know, we just need to be watching that. And
Sure.
for the example, the new trucks that we're looking to get to replace these old ones, are we looking at models based on their fuel efficiency? Are we sure we need to buy ones that are as big as the old ones? Who's asking these questions? I don't...
I'm asking questions, but I also, you know, it's been so tight to even try to get a vehicle. I've got them looking at used car lots, and as you know, that's difficult, and it's not necessarily what mechanics would like because you have a shorter life in the long run. But yes, I'll make sure that we get you a report here in the next month.
We had another question on this end as well. Comment, Jeff?
I attended the last Green Fleet meeting, and it seemed like some resolution was made in order to get the data that you're looking for, the mileage over a certain period of time, and they came up with I thought it was a pretty simple solution. Just measure how much gas is going on and divide it by the month, and then you know. So, but one thing that was kind of I don't know whether it was disturbing or not, but it seemed like the tradition is, within the city, one department has a vehicle, it becomes to the point where they can't use it anymore, it gets hand-me-down, down, and consequently, the result is you have some very bad vehicles within the fleet of the entire city. It would, if you want improvement, the best thing to do is when it's no longer cannot be used by the department is dispose of it. You know, sell it, get it on eBay, but don't hand it down to another department.
Oh, we're thinking in terms of recycling when we do this. And again, the top of the line is always going to be the police force.
Right.
And after that, I mean, you do, you know, a pickup truck, for instance, pickup trucks.
Right. I understand what you're saying, and I'm still saying that as long as you keep doing that, the data will always be bad, because you're always going to be having, it'll be a worse vehicle than it was 2 years ago. It'll be worse 3 years from now, but you're still keeping it for 10, 15 years, or at least until it finally falls apart. So consequently, your data is always going to look bad, because the vehicles never, they're just no good.
Remember nicely.
But I imagine some of it's also a balancing act of literally balancing the budget.
Right, the finances.
And so if we want to look at more money,
Right.
and that might be something we want to consider in the long run,
Right.
if you want to consider a bigger budget so that the departments can operate and purchase those vehicles, then that means we need to raise more revenue.
Right.
So that, I mean, that's a bigger,
Yeah.
long-term issue too, but I appreciate the comments.
I have 2 or 3 departments waiting in line for this next hand-me-down.
Right.
So we are just working.
But that's the problem, and I think that has to be addressed at some point. Realistically, if your goal is try to improve overall efficiency within the fleet being the whole pie, it'll never happen. It can't get efficient. No matter how good the new vehicles are, the bad ones will always pull them down.
But there will be a transition out of the bad one.
Bring the date up of retirement much, much closer than it is now, instead of waiting, I don't know, what, 98 you said? 89.
But realize that's, you know, that's 96,000 miles.
Well, I understand that.
Okay, so that's a very, you know, not a lot of miles out there.
Yeah.
We have transitioned, two city councils ago, we transitioned a lot of the, as Member Bain would say, La Bambas out, Crown Vics, we got rid of
Right.
a whole swatch of them because
Sure.
the same reason what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We were holding on to them. They were great cars to just truck around in.
Right.
But we will have to get rid of those, you're right. We
Yeah.
have we still have quite a few Crown Vics in a
Sure.
fleet as well as Impalas. Not that the Impalas are that bad. I kind of was surprised when I use the mayor's one here at 22 miles a gallon,
Service
which I
safety
expect to be,
directors.
what?
Right.
Service safety.
The service safety car.
Right.
Sorry. It's her car. But again, I was so pleasantly surprised 22 miles a gallon is not bad for an old Impala from my point of view.
Right.
You know? So I don't know in terms of the transition, the mileage probably stays the same regardless of age, but as you say, phasing those out would get us a better number and,
Right.
and get us closer to what we want to do.
And realistically, we have to live within the constraints of the budget. And
We do.
data collection is important and
Right.
nice and beneficial, but we're also limited with the revenue we have coming in as a city at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other?
Just one last thing to add on to the end is that, yeah, if we do have old vehicles that are inefficient, and it would be nice to replace them, and we do hand down to other departments. That's a good point. It's out of necessity in many cases.
Right.
One thing I don't think I've seen much of, and this isn't a specific critique of anyone or anything in the city, but looking at the cost of ownership of a vehicle, how much would, it depends on how much it's driven, what its purpose, how much it's driven. But if it uses half the amount of gas and gas is $4 a gallon, would it make sense to put a little more money into that vehicle and get a little better, more efficient one compared to an old Crown Vic that goes to the rec department and is only used one day a week and doesn't really get driven much. So I think that's one of the reasons why I asked for the data collection, is so that we can look at a list and say, this vehicle is driven all the time and it's inefficient. Could we move it, or could we look for a relatively inexpensive replacement? And so that's the purpose, and so I think what everyone's saying is true here.
Right.
Just looking at two different sides of the same coin.
Okay.
Are there any other miscellaneous from the city service safety director?
No, thank you.
Okay. I believe that I don't have any.
And that, having dealt with all of our committees and reports, we will call this.
Isn't there a transportation committee on my agenda? or is
I'm
that-
sorry?
Oh, there is, darn it.
That's, this is
It
the
wasn't
old
on my
agenda?
own.
Oh, okay.
That's an outdated version.
No, I'm sorry.
And here, I thought there was a new one. I had one without it. Okay, great.
The only thing I had a question, this is Oahu's.
Okay, so what,
No, that's okay. I mean,
No, that we do need to talk about these. I'm sorry.
Transportation?
Yes. At least one of the two.
Okay,
I
transportation
was in the
committee.
wrong place. I'm sorry,
is
because
called
mine
to order. We
didn't have vehicle.
I got
We
city
have this
services
on-
and safety here,
could,
and the old
since-
one that,
Since this wasn't on the agenda that went out most recently, is it possible that it's something we could cover under city services, just because it wasn't publicly announced?
It did go out. I just
But then
didn't
a new
print out
one.
the updated agenda.
Yes, we didn't, I was told we didn't need it.
Okay, well,
We were saving paper.
excuse the
Why?
confusion here. It was on the agenda, so let's handle whatever issues the mayor's office has on transportation this week.
And don't ever let it happen again.
go ahead. What do you need?
So we have the Columbus Road and Lancaster Street engineering, construction and engineering. And is this something that we need to address soon?
I had it down for March 11th discussion. I don't know if something occurred that Jessica moved it up or not.
Okay, I
I
wasn't,
don't have dollar amounts yet.
I wasn't
Okay, so
notified by
okay.
her
why don't we
either.
hold off?
Okay,
Okay.
but the Northwest Bikeway Spur is indeed here.
So we also have an Athens bikeway spur, and this is the second phase of this project. Yeah, go ahead.
You have things on it. They're waiting for you.
Sorry. This was what I spoke about, I believe, earlier regarding obtaining the property at University Estates. And she still has it on here in anticipation, because we've been funded for the first phase, the one with the Hope property, as it were. So I guess it would have to, for this April 5th deadline, have to be read here during the month of March, or actually begin, she has it starting on February 18th. Since the ownership is in flux, I guess I would ask just to be cognizant of it. It may come up and have to be, maybe suspended by second reading or what have you, so.
And do we have an idea of how much local funds would be needed for this project?
I would estimate, based on this, a little over 60,000,
About 60,000.
63.
Are you using, like, people hours and the appraisals and everything as part of the match?
Local cash and in-kind work.
Right.
So it'll be,
And Clean Ohio has a 25% match.
thank you.
And again, this is the spur coming off of the old railroad crossing at the west,
Continue extending it
west
towards
side
University
park.
Estates.
Up to 56.
It would
56 or
actually go
682.
across to,
682.
if successful, it would go across the property and actually connect with Armitage. It is supposed to be the whole vision of eventually that Moonville, trail, as it were. But as you know, it's a little bit challenging there with the railroad and the bridge and vehicles. So.
Am I correct also in understanding that this is part of the protecting the city's water source with this particular grant and the riparian buffer strip? That's correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And a future well field
Correct.
for that, future well in that area if we can obtain the property.
Sooner or later, we'll be putting another well in, so the idea is to start thinking about cost of that and where.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have an announcement to make?
Town hall meeting.
Town hall meeting tomorrow. Also, I did receive this from, One Ohio Now. Basically, they're trying to have some kind of public hearing on the 25th of February, 5:30 to 8 o'clock at the community center. Obviously, it's to talk about the state budget, so just be aware of that. I think it's on our city website at this point.
Just one more remind, town hall meeting tomorrow night.
6:30 at the community center.
Okay.
I'll be taking notes and talking about things, but basically it's time for the input of the citizens. So that'll give me a chance. So everybody come, you can hear what the concerns are and what's going to happen. 3 minutes apiece. You get 3 minutes to tell us what we need to do in the city.
Did you have something else? Okay. Anybody else have anything? We will try to adjourn again. It is now 9:02.